Good evening, welcome. I'm John. I'm a bookseller at Literati Bookstore in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're so pleased to welcome Angelo Nikolopoulos and Anne Carson this evening in support of Angelo's new collection of poems, Pleasure. A quick overview of our webinars for our attendees. The chat is closed, but you can keep the chat window open as I'll be sharing links to purchase Pleasure from Literati throughout the event. The live transcription is available on your toolbar as well. If you're watching us later on YouTube, there are always links to purchase books in the description directly below me. And you can also like and subscribe to our channel to be kept up to date on all of our At Home with Literati events as they become available on our channel. And as a reminder, you can shop for more books at literatibookstore.com to have shipped to your home anywhere in the United States. And if you live in Southeast Michigan or the Ann Arbor area, of course, our doors are open to the public for in-store shopping. Most of all, we'd just like to thank you for your attendance this morning, or this evening, or this morning, or this afternoon, depending on where and when in the world you may be joining us from. So without further ado, I'll introduce our readers in reverse order that they will be appearing. Angelo Nikolopoulos is the author of Obscenely Yours and Pleasure. His poems have appeared in Best American Poetry, Best New Poets, Boston Review, Fence, Los Angeles Review, Tin House, and elsewhere. Winner of the 2011 Discovery Boston Review Poetry Contest, he has received fellowships from the Jerome Foundation, McDowell Colony, and Saltonstall Foundation for the Arts. A former Teach for America high school teacher, he has taught creative writing at New York University and Rutgers University. He teaches at Hunter College and lives in Brooklyn, New York. But opening the reading tonight, Anne Carson was born in Canada and teaches ancient Greek for a living. Her awards and honors include the Lannan Award, the Pushcart Prize, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and a MacArthur Fellowship. Please join me in welcoming Anne Carson into your living rooms.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Angelo. Very honored to be part of your book launch. Angelo and I have shared many shenanigans at New York University, where we both used to be employed before we wisely quit. But that's the old days. I'm going to read one poem as a kind of warm-up for Angelo. This is a poem that was inspired by a dancer from Athens named Dimitris Papaioannou, who choreographed a few years ago a dance called the Great Tamer. It came to Michigan. I saw it at the Power Center. And I was moved to write this after that. But after that, also COVID started. And I continued to work on this poem, and it came to seem to me to be my COVID poem, sort of a chat between me and COVID. But you don't think of it that way, but it's just a weird thing that happened. I never did find the right title for it, so I just call it after the first line, I tame you. I tame you. No, you don't. You were nude. You were intangible. You were unconvincing. You were vague. You claimed you were born from angels. You stank of the horrors of war. You blazed with ruthless pride. Your full, loose mouth blazed. You had a fruit bloom. You bloomed like a cannibal, ready to devour or be devoured, or both. You had your portrait painted as a butcher's block, yet you were not a still life. You were meat, but recently living. You had come with your own legs. I replaced your legs. I replaced your crotches, all of them. You were ghosting around as if a mystery of hymen. I undressed you. That is the only difference. Beyond that, there was little development between us. I used crutches, stilts, evisceration, plaster casts. I rooted your shoes. I tilted the stage. I knocked it apart. I combined you with other genders. I rolled up my sleeves. I showed you no tenderness. We might as well have been sexual or medical or archaeologists. I required you to clean up whatever mess we made. I used the mess again next day. I slowed your steps, inhibited your breathing, assaulted you with film score music. I littered the stage with open graves and you fell into them. Hilarious, I laughed at you. I made you walk on your hands without oxygen or effective friends. I made you build the floor you walked on. I blew your clothes off. I mangled your Orpheus scene. I threw someone else's thighs at you. I doused you with the waters of Lethe. I flattened you into a lozenge and stuffed you in my pocket. I shot all the arrows of King Darius's Persian army at you, then made you pick them all up. I tossed your skeleton off its slab, it smashed. I played with your skull. I got you chasing a nostalgic scrap of paper, then turned out the lights and told the audience to go home. Beyond that, nothing was resolved between us. The legs were of various heights. You invited me into your golden age. I made you a stranger, a loser, an Arabiste, an undocumented alien, an unclaimed hostage, a bad birthday gift. I had you eaten into by the human. I broke your energy. I invented your gravity. I pulled you out through your own peephole. I tame you. No, you don't. Thank you and good night. Over to you, Angelo.
Thank you, Anne. That was really beautiful. Thank you to John as well for having us. I'm sorry that we can't be there. I know that Zoom readings have become the norm, and they can be a bit difficult. So I will keep it brief as well, and just read a little bit from my book, Pleasure, which I wrote over the course of a summer where I lived on a small island in Greece called Syros. And the goal that I had was to be as solitary as possible. And I was thinking a lot about the kind of life that I wanted to have, and thinking a lot about how some ancient Greeks rather, developed a kind of ethics based on figuring out what they considered to be a beautiful life. And in pursuing that beautiful life vigorously, one could attain the greatest form of pleasure. And so I sort of realized slowly that more and more that kind of beautiful life became a solitary one. And so this book is kind of exploring that. The other thing that you need to know is weeks before I left on my trip, my mother was diagnosed with a kind of brain cancer, which required immediate surgery. And so a lot of ideas of the mother permeate the text. So I won't speak, I'll just read throughout. The edge. My body exists for itself in two general forms, boredom and hysteria. Each an appetite, what I put into myself. If I smoke too early, it will ruin the entire day. Here's what I did with my body. I collected moon-colored stones, watered the basil, swept the marble floors for the pleasure of the sound. I picked and carried ripened figs in the fold of my shirt, something seen in a film. I walked to the edge of the cliff and I walked myself back. What I ingest, white wine, panoramic view, comes out of my body, pissing off the cliff. There is no other way. I am cruising because I'm alive. It is a reflexive desire standing at the edge of the cliff that pulses. The body says to the mind, let me live, but it cannot. One pleasure replaces another pleasure. There is no progress. Tell you what for. SOS. If it's true that there is someone for everyone, which is to say, someone will find you beautiful, it must also be true there will always be someone who finds you repulsive. In the dull village, the bed is warm, but I do not lie down again. Part of it. A feral cat, skittish yet curious, on the balcony this morning. Feeding him cold cuts by hand is strangely pleasurable, like being chosen for a dance. Sunrise scene, horizon as blue scale punctured by pastel, provokes mild joy. Agnes Martin says, if you get up in the morning and you feel really happy and everything seems good, that's without cause. When the cat has finished with the meat, he returns to the field below. What Agnes means is, sometimes you just can't help yourself. There's a slight excitement, a faint image that survives briefly until supplanted by another. It is a vagueness. And also she means, sometimes you want to die. The field below is now fully animated, bright pastoral buzzing, and yet I am hardly part of it. When I look out across the waves beneath the cliff, I have no desire to plunge into them. A silky attitude. To pass the time, I watch the film Never on Sunday. In prostitute drag, Melina Mercouri sings, because at night as I go to port, I am waiting to find an unknown person. In her tawdry apartment, she enacts the eros of memory. Writhing on her bed, she is a bug-eyed beauty. I sit on my own bed, my tan legs folded like a lawn chair, smashing against my own sex. Outside in the night, men brood along the rocks, worry-beated. A paligari, Mercury relishes, is a strong young man, and together we go to the moon. Genet, in a letter to Sartre, it should be added, something which is only true of our homosexual situation, that to refuse life implies taking on a lonely and passive attitude, to be a woman who in society is submissive and waits for a man to put her in her place. It is, he says, a silky attitude. What we love. In the square where I buy wine poured from a barrel, the shopkeeper asks for my number. I will show you the beautiful waters. As much as I admire McCrory's prostitute, we are never what we love. This means I'm Homer, the American set to reform her, thereby restoring Greece to her ancient purity. He's invested in art, in symbols. I take notes throughout the film, mining for signs, a redemptive message from 1960. Love your baby face, the shopkeeper writes. I'm hard fucker, he adds, with 3 thunderbolt emoji. Are there 2 ways of knowing the world? One passive, the other insatiable. When the film's over, I go and smoke beneath the stars. This is a romantic gesture. Gestures are all I have. Before they die. When the shopkeeper finally arrives and removes his pants, I discover his entire right thigh branded in a black cover-up tattoo, a cylinder of black, as if his upper leg has been omitted. In the dark, when he mounts me, it's like being fucked by an amputee. Afterwards, he demands a meal. You're not out to your parents, I say. Don't you want them to know you before they die? I lie across his chest, fanned out like a child. It's not of their business, the shopkeeper says. His belly protrudes. We look out across the field, softened by the sunset. I have been put in my place. I lean into his chest and decide I will never see him again. This, too, is a romantic gesture. Toward union. To walk away means the scene is completed. It is out of time, a closed form I can revisit, pick up like a charm. I hold it beneath the light. Its refractions vary on mood, the time of day I regard it, but its essence, like a snow globe, remains the same forever. Perhaps I absorb men like a greedy mouth. I harvest and preserve them in my mind like an owl pellet. The desire to ingest someone is an inclination toward union, a somatic nuptial, absorbing the beloved the way a cell absorbs another. This is why one eats pussy, why one eats asshole. This may be why when I jerk off, I eat my own cum. Simone Weil says, it may be that vice, depravity, and crime are nearly always, in their essence, attempts to eat beauty, to eat what we should only look at. I have looked. While in a spiritual holding pattern, the US Supreme Court declares gay marriage a nationwide right. The sun sets, pale blaze the color of exhausted dogwood, where I've spent the day singularly on the balcony in my blue shorts. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness, Justice Kennedy writes. They ask for equal dignity in the eyes of the law. The judgment of the Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit is reversed. Later, washing dishes, a tight panic at the night's openness. I've made dinner, cleaned the kitchen, read an essay. I have looked out across the waves. In relationships to others, to time and location, I will show you the beautiful waters. One tries to impose form on the vast formlessness of solitary experience. I stood on the balcony for as long as I could bear it. The hardest part of being a poet, the joke goes, was knowing what to do with the other 23 and a half hours of the day. Late evening, Percy, British and septuagenarian, eats my asshole beneath a portrait of a soldier. It is an intergenerational triangulation. I do not reciprocate. In his crumbling villa, I offer myself like a vista. Even electric eels. Their hope is not to be condemned to live in loneliness. On planet Romeo, where we've met, Percy asks to take me out. To fear the lonely is to fear unwholesomeness, the leper descending into his cave. In truth, Percy repulsed me, but I offered myself to him because I was made beautiful by the transaction. At Kefi Bar, where the local men cruise, let's do it. Let's fall in love, a woman sings to herself on the veranda. Even electric eels do it. The instant. I don't like ashtrays, red candles, dry lavender, elevators, dress socks, and hard-boiled eggs, the Iliad, Gerber daisies, war memoirs, Venetian blinds. My preferences buoy me along a series of unmarked days. I am waiting it out. At the end of one drink, I pour myself another. I leave one room for another. I wait for inspiration to descend, and it does not. It's like walking in perpetuity through a corridor of dull agitation. I like white Pomeranians, the human clavicle, empty glass vases, Philip Glass, metamorphosis, lip balm and lyricism, cypress trees, sweeping, Rilke's Ninth Elegy. It is by suffering the failure of my imagination that I establish a tragedy. I suffer because I am unremarkable. I FaceTime with Mother. She cries the instant she sees my face appear on the screen. Let me show you the view from the balcony, I tell her, slightly drunk. SOS. What I like, what I don't like. What this means is my body is not the same as yours. And I think I'll end with a poem toward the end of the book. Thank you for listening. SOS. This morning, picking figs from the tree, seemingly joyless, absent-mindedly, there is the pleasure of the task. I walk directly into the scene, having drunk too much the night before and every night, cigarette marked. I take and I take from the tree. Is it possible to love? I do not know what I'm being asked. The summer is over. For one last time, I floated sexless in the sea. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Angelo Nikolopoulos. Thank you, Anne Carson, for reading for us this evening. I hope all of you watching and listening are, as I am, thrilled to be entering the weekend with such wonderful poetry to start it. Angelo and we hope to have you both in the store in the not too distant future. But thank you for joining us at Home with Literati tonight. It's a pleasure to have you both. You can of course purchase books by both of tonight's readers there's links in the chat. Books are available also at Literati Bookstore. We hope you both stay safe and continue to be well. And to all of our viewers, we look forward to seeing you at the next event. Have a great weekend, all. Take care.